the kitchen today is our special guest, Dr. Davis, New York Times bestselling author of Wheat Belly, and today we're talking going wheatlessness, why we should do it, and we really should.
Today is the day. Let's make this happen.
Welcome to the kitchen, Dr. Davis.
Oh, thank you, Megan.
It's so great to have you here. Your book, we first spoke, it was February 2012 when Wheat Belly first came out. It has since caused an incredible revolution. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Did you expect that?
I knew when I released this book that it worked. That much I knew for a fact because I had seen this many thousands of times play out in my office, online, people who were doing this.
Yeah.
So I had no doubts, no qualms whatsoever that this worked, and it worked gangbusters. Mm-hmm. What I didn't realize was that it would take off so fast and so hard and so wide. And I think I credit that to social media, that this fire spread because people were sharing stories online.
Right. And what I asked you 2 years ago, and I don't know if you remember what you said, really interesting what you say now, because I said, you're a cardiologist. And you've since been on Dr. Oz, you've been around the world with your philosophy and with this book. How are the doctors responding now? Has anything changed?
I think they were first dumbfounded, skeptical, and kind of poo-pooed it.
Which is usually the response with new information. I'm saying that, but...
I think what changed it was that their own patients were coming to them saying, look at me, I lost 43 pounds, my waist is now 4 inches smaller, and you told me I was pre-diabetic, I'm now no longer pre-diabetic, and you know what, my acid reflux and ulcerative colitis went away, my depression lifted for the first time in years, my migraine headaches are gone. So story after story of lives transformed were being presented to my colleagues. I think the first time they saw it, they ignored it. Second time, they continued to dismiss it. 5th, 10th times, now, gee, maybe there was something to this after all. So I think they're just witnessing the same thing we're all witnessing, that is, lives transformed. You can't deny there's something going on when you see it happen so darn many times so consistently.
One of the questions I get asked most, especially when I present on my own book on diet, is about how what I'm saying, what you're saying, is completely contradictory to the food pyramid and Canada's food guide, where you're essentially eliminating an entire food group. What is your response when people ask you about that?
Lots to say. So what I'll say that grains were a mistake in the first place. So we added grains more or less 10,000 years ago in an act of desperation. We now allow them to dominate diet. So grains, for a long list of reasons, never deserved a place in diet. Now there's it's a kind of a dark aspect to this too. If you and I were not about health, but about profit, and we wanted to profit from the diet of the world, we would persuade the world that we should consume commoditizable foods. That is, foods that can be transported long distances, have extended shelf lives, not the 3 days of a tomato, but the 3 years of the seeds of grasses. It allows complex financial manipulations to arbitrage your way to large profits. We're not talking about a few million, we're talking about a few billion. Well, the only foods that can do that on any kind of large worldwide scale are the seeds of grasses, rice, wheat, and corn. So now we have this situation, Megan, where 50% of all human calories come from wheat, corn, and rice, the seeds of grasses. The only truly commoditizable foods consumed on a large worldwide scale. This is about money. And so that's why we're told, that's part of the motivations for why we're told to have a diet dominated by the seeds of grasses.
And right now, we talk about you just mentioned the dietary streams, and I feel like right now there are 2 main trends that are dictating the diet, which is a heavy meat, animal-based protein, Paleolithic diet in North America, and then the vegan or plant-based, 100% plant-based diet. And with Wheat Belly, we're getting rid of the starches, which is grains and also lentils, legumes, the starchy vegetables. What are your thoughts on the vegan diet and the proponents of it, the Esselstyns, Teacher Colin Campbell, and those teaching, which both have their studies, and I'm not a big proponent of nutritional science. I mean, you can skew it to prove whatever you want to prove. But how do you take that into what you're doing when people are like, well, I'm vegan, I'm not going to eat that?
I'm a former vegetarian. 20-some years ago, I followed, back then, the advice of Dr. Dean Ornish, And I probably became diabetic at a time when I was jogging about 3 to 5 miles nearly every day, and eating a diet low in fat, no animal products, and only grains, fruits, and vegetables. Now, I'm no longer diabetic, by the way, with no grains whatsoever. But I had to kind of blunder my way out of that mess. And so I've dabbled with these things on and off. So the battle here for me isn't vegetarian versus omnivory or carnivory, but what is appropriate for human consumption. So if we revert back to a Paleolithic or pre-Neolithic style of eating, hungry humans eat the brains, heart, pancreas, and thyroid glands of animals,
And livers.
as well as the meat and the livers, as
the
well
iron.
as mushrooms, nuts, edible parts of plants. The one string that connects all diets of wild humans, there's wild variation, all those diets, but the one thing that connects all primitive diets, and that includes primitive humans of the pre-Neolithic era, as well as more recent hunter-gatherer cultures, one thing ties them all together: none consume grains. And I think that's the lesson to take from the Paleolithic type of observation. All consume animal products.
Right.
So can you be healthy and be vegetarian? Tough issue, because we do develop vitamin B12 deficiency, we do develop taurine deficiency, omega-3 fatty acid deficiency, vitamin K2 deficiency. Now, we know that vegetarians live longer and are healthier compared to average Canadians or Americans. What we don't know is how well vegetarians fare compared to, say, someone following a more Paleolithic type of style of eating, or what we would regard as an ideal style of eating. So I don't really know. I don't think anybody has that answer just yet. Now, I do sympathize with the notion that vegetarianism, veganism is a good thing for humanitarian reasons. And one of my regrets is, as we convert to a more carnivorous diet, we do sacrifice animals because we are carnivorous creatures.
Yeah.
I wish that weren't true, but I believe it is true. Now, so as we convert from a grain-filled diet to a grain-free diet, there is often an increase in animal meat consumption. So I'd like to see that become a humane consumption of animal products.
And in your book, you deconstruct, and a big movement towards this animal-free eating, and a lot of people were converted to it by books like the China Study. And in Wheat Belly, you deconstruct a lot of those studies. You actually refer to a website that was very interesting that breaks down these studies. And how do you sort of, with that, and a lot of the criticisms then that have come with your book, and perhaps, some claiming it's faulty science, or, there's been any number of, and I listened to a debate you did on CBC's The Q last February, despite the criticisms of your book and maybe the meal plans, and when we last spoke, I actually asked you about things like microwaves and artificial sweeteners that are in there. But despite the criticisms and some of the challenges, it's still caused a complete revolution, and people are still doing it, and it's caught on amazingly well. Why? Why is everyone into this now?
I think because it works. There are very few diets, there are very few foods you remove from your experience where you have transformations of your health in your life. In other words, if I stop eating sugar, I will feel better.
Yeah.
I may lose some weight. End of story. If I stop eating apples, not a whole lot happens.
Right.
If I stop eating wheat specifically, a whole bunch of things happen. I lose astounding quantities of weight from the waste.
Yeah.
I have relief from autoimmune conditions. My depression can lift. My paranoia and anxiety can lift. My appetite drops dramatically. My appetite specifically for junk carbohydrates. My leg swelling can go away. My blood sugar can drop sufficient to convert me from diabetic to non-diabetic. My ulcerative colitis can go away. My Crohn's disease can go away. My small intestinal bacterial overgrowth can go away. I think that's why people are, I'm a big believer that most health can be taken care of by the individual. You don't need the healthcare system to manage most of your health. I love that this message allows people to seize control of their own health in so many ways.
So are you convinced then, because I sometimes look at, there's a lot of dietary plans, that the benefits of the Wheat Belly plan is not just eliminating processed foods, which is what this does, and it's also what, the blood type diet would do is, you go to whole foods. you believe and you're convinced and you've seen the science that says that it's the elimination of wheat, specifically in the gliadin, that is creating the dramatic benefit.
It's elimination of wheat, making with all its components, as well as related grains. So rye and barley are close enough in their gliadin protein structure and wheat germ gluten structures to essentially be the same as wheat. Rice, by the way, the lectin of rice is close enough to the lectins of wheat that also can be lumped together. Corn, because the gliadin protein of corn is called zein. It's close enough that it has a lot of overlapping effects. So it's really about grains, but I pick on the worst bully of all, which is wheat. So a lot of these effects develop because when you stop wheat, people say you stop gluten, but that's only partly true. You do stop gluten, but you stop gliadin.
Yeah.
Gliadin is the thing that acts as an opiate and stimulates appetite. It's a thing that has different effects in people with different susceptibilities, like kids with ADHD and autistic spectrum disorder, who get behavioral outbursts and difficult attention span, have marked improvement. People with paranoia and who have schizophrenia, that gets better, not cured, but just better.
Yeah.
People with bulimia and binge eating disorder lose their food obsessions. Everyday people with none of those conditions lose their constant hunger and desire for carbohydrates. There's also loss of the wheat germ gluten. Wheat germ gluten is a bowel toxin, a direct bowel toxin. That's why you get the relief from acid reflux, irritable bowel syndrome. You have improvement in gallbladder function because that wheat germ gluten blocks the cholecystokinin enzyme that drives pancreatic and gallbladder function. You lose the amylopectin A. That's the carbohydrate in wheat that raises blood sugar higher than table sugar. So you lose all the components, and that's just a partial list, by the way.
Right.
You lose all the varied components of wheat. That's why I stress this is not about gluten-free.
Yeah.
It's like saying cigarettes are bad because they have tar. Well, cigarettes are bad because they have many dozens of things, if not hundreds. Likewise, wheat has many dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of components way beyond gluten.
Right. And you don't want to just eliminate the gluten in the wheat and replace it with potato starch and cornstarch and all the other starches that are in these gluten-free foods that we think are healthy.
Exactly right. So we don't take a problem, wheat, and replace it with another problem, which is gluten-free foods made of cornstarch, rice flour, tapioca starch, potato starch.
Right.
So we replace them with real foods.
Yes.
And that's where the real magic happens.
Mm-hmm. And you're about to embark on a tour across this beautiful country of ours, Canada. You're passing over the prairies and the wheat fields of this country, and this is a wheat-growing country. What do we do with these fields of wheat and the people who make their livelihoods off growing our wheat?
Well, several things to know, Megan. One, if there is a conversion towards factory farm-raised meats, the wheat farmers in the wheat industry win out because livestock consume 7-fold more than we do. So that's part of the reason why we don't get more pushback than we do. That's not my intention, of course, but that's just kind of an unintended consequence. I do think you and I should eat pasture-fed, organic type of meats and hopefully raised humanely.
Right.
But I think over time, it can't happen overnight because it's not easy to convert the production style and equipment of a farm. But I think farmers should at least consider, and they have been, by the way, they call me, should consider converting to meeting market demand for the foods people are asking for. If people are asking for spinach and kale, start thinking about that. That's a big change in the way high-yield monocrop crops are handled nowadays.
And the government subsidies are handled.
And the government subsidies. This can't happen by next Tuesday. It's going to happen over many decades. But I think they
wanted more spinach for next Tuesday, though. Give me my greens.
It'll happen. It's going to happen slowly.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Megan.
Great to have you here in the kitchen. And as I mentioned, you're embarking on a cross-Canada tour, and the tour is called?
Experience Wheatlessness.
Okay, and where can people get their tickets to this event?
Ideasfestival.ca.
Ideasfestival.ca, and if you use coupon code Meghan Telpner, you will get a discount on your tickets, and they're going from Montreal all the way over to BC, so check that out. I want to thank you so much again for joining. If you don't yet have the book, get the book. It's so good. For more nutritious goodness, you can follow me on Twitter at Meghan Telpner, and of course lots more over at meghantelpner.com. Today is the day. Let's make this happen, and every choice truly counts. I want to see you rise and shine to the most beautiful, healthy version of you. Thank you for joining, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye!